无论中国怎么做，外媒总是有话说。1个月前，他们说中国的清零政策代价高昂，无路可走。中国的错误清零让经济处于崩溃边缘。1个月后，他们又说中国的新冠噩梦可能会成为全球灾难。中国缺乏动态清零的退出计划，人们正在为此付出代价。其实，对于外媒的危言耸听，我们早已见怪不怪。2020年至今，外媒一直变着法子抹黑中国抗疫，其双标和偏见早已被世人所看清。华东师范大学政治与国际关系学院的马奥尼教授在接受我们采访时，也表达了类似的观点。
Well, you know, some Western media and Western leaders have always politicized the pandemic, often in racist ways. And not just the pandemic, of course. There's been a constant drumbeat of demonizing discourse from the West against China, primarily the United States. Of course, there's also always a double standard at work. So on the one hand, let's not be surprised when the U.S. says these things, and let's not get distracted by them. It's just idiot speech that aims to hurt your image and feelings. On the other hand, we probably could have done a better job, perhaps with the first few days of the exit. But even if we'd done so, I'm not sure it really would have changed things.
马奥尼教授于2010年开始在华东师范大学工作，2019年12月回到美国。由于旅行受限，他不得不在美国待了2年，直到2021年12月才重返中国工作。因此，马奥尼教授对于中美两国在疫情防控上的不同，有着第一手的切身体验和发言权。他在采访中告诉我，在美国的2年是当地疫情最严重的时期，他眼睁睁地看着身边不断有人离去，包括自己的5位好友。我想，这也就是马奥尼教授对于美国疫情应对如此失望的原因之一吧。
The U.S. is deeply fragmented and polarized, with systemic failures in governance stretching back decades. Its Achilles heel has long been its health system and the general health of its population. The U.S. saw at least 1.1 million deaths, a figure that some experts believe represents a 15 to 20% undercount. Now, current studies indicate that those who died lost 10 years of life on average. In public health, we call those YLLs, or years of life lost. And when we do so, we look at aggregates. So if the U.S. lost 1.1 million deaths, and on average the person lost 10 years, then in fact the U.S. lost more than 10 million years of life. Now, in China today, not even the worst estimates predict that we'll reach anything as proportionally as bad as that. So without a doubt, we know that exiting zero COVID is now producing more deaths from the disease. But overall, the numbers will be as low as they can possibly be. So they've got to live longer. And many who will be saved now will remain saved. So in the aggregate, what we can say is that tens of millions of years of life were saved, perhaps 100 million. And in these respects alone, the policy was an astonishing success, a fact that will not change regardless of whatever happens next.
正如马奥尼教授所言，中国3年抗疫为人们争取了宝贵的生存时间。当然，随着疫情防控措施的转变，确诊和死亡病例在短期内会有所上升。这样的变化让不少人一时间难以适应，甚至出现了焦虑和迷茫的情绪。那既然如此，中国为什么要做出改变呢？3年来，中国有效处置了100余起聚集性疫情和5波全球疫情冲击，保护了人民的生命安全和身体健康。随着病毒的不断变种，毒性持续下降，全民疫苗接种率的不断提高，中国适时调整对策，在保证生命安全的前提下，加速恢复社会经济和人民生活的常态。
You know, exiting zero COVID in a country this large and diverse was always going to be tricky. I think many of us thought that the goal might be to reach next March, and perhaps it was, but we fell short. Consequently, many people are stunned by how quickly the surge came as the controls dropped. But as my son pointed out, what this shows you is how much the controls were still working, holding back this massive dam burst. But that simply couldn't be continued anymore. And this is because everyone else in the world had quit, and the social, economic, and political costs were no longer sustainable for continuing alone. In fact, I think we'd reached a point where the only way that we could continue to hold it, even for a few more months, was to start locking down cities again, like we did to Shanghai early this year, but this time doing it to many others simultaneously, including Beijing, and that just wasn't possible anymore. At the same time, efforts to ease more gradually were being resisted in some local areas, so the gradual approach wasn't working either. Finally, I think the government figured we might be able to wear the worst of this up to or including Chinese New Year, thereby minimizing the overall negative impact on schools and the economy.
目前全国各地正陆续面临着疫情流行的压力。不瞒大家说，在做采访的时候，我和马奥尼教授都是刚刚阳康，隔着屏幕还有点咳嗽。不过对于自己阳过这事儿，教授还是比较乐观的。他告诉我，他的经历不算太糟糕，只是有几晚不太舒服。总体来说，他还是比较幸运的，恢复的比较快。
Basically, I want to know if people have recovered. If you've recovered, then we can spend time together and not worry about things. By current published standards, I recovered a few days ago, and in fact, I tested negative today. But I still have to be a little careful. I can't work or exercise as much as I did before the infection. I think it'll still take some time to be fully recovered. My experience was not too bad. A few unpleasant nights, but I consider myself rather lucky. But one of the funny things is I still find myself flinching in public when someone coughs.
采访中，马奥尼教授的乐观也让刚刚阳过的我心情放松不少。既然过去3年我们可以用艰苦卓绝的努力创造疫情防控的奇迹，相信未来我们也可以齐心协力共度难关。我知道有很多人，包括我自己，都很希望时间能够重回2019，回到那个没有疫情的世界。但很遗憾，时间不可能倒流，历史总是在向前迈进。人类就是在于大灾大难的一次次抗争中得到发展和进步。我们能做的就是适应变化，坚定信心，积极向前看，争取早日走出疫情的阴霾。